If you grew up watching any of those wild 90s disaster movies, you probably have a super specific image in your head when you hear our topic today. Swarming clouds of doom, completely darkening the sky, terrorizing peaceful neighborhoods, and relentlessly hunting down movie stars. Today, we're looking at a global phenomenon that has absolutely captivated our imaginations and, let's be honest, fueled some incredibly sensationalized headlines for decades: the so-called killer bee. Our mission in this explainer is to dig into the hard data, look at the underlying science, and definitively separate those Hollywood monster myths from the deeply fascinating and, honestly, highly complex biological reality. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever frozen in total panic when a bee suddenly buzzed right past your ear? It's a completely primal reaction, right? But that feeling leads us straight into the central mystery we're going to unravel today. Are these insects really the unstoppable menace that pop culture has made them out to be? Or is there a much deeper ecological story waiting to be told here? We need to figure out just how dangerous they actually are to humans and animals. And to do that, we have to start by looking at the very foundation of their fearsome reputation. Section 1. The killer bee myth. Fast, aggressive, fearless. To truly understand them, we have to establish what they actually are scientifically. We're talking about the Africanized honeybee. It's absolutely crucial to realize that they aren't some mythological monsters spawned from the shadows. They're a very specific hybrid species. And the reason this hybrid even exists, well, it all comes down to basic agriculture. Back in the mid-20th century, Brazil desperately wanted to boost its honey industry. The problem was that the standard European honeybees, the ones people had used for centuries, were, well, they were incredibly docile, but they were also kind of sluggish and highly unproductive in that intense tropical heat. On the flip side, you had African honeybees. Now, they absolutely thrived in the heat and produced massive amounts of honey, but they were incredibly hard to manage. So the goal was simple: crossbreed them. Section 2. An experiment gone wrong. The origin story. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because this is where it gets crazy. In 1956, a prominent geneticist brought several dozen African queen bees to a research facility in São Paulo, Brazil. Now, the hives were fitted with these special excluder grates, basically metal screens with holes just big enough for the little worker bees to pass through, but way too small for the larger reproductive queen bees to escape. Seems foolproof, right? But in 1957, a visiting beekeeper, thinking these grates were needlessly interfering with the workers, simply removed them. Literally just popped them off. It was such a mundane little mistake, but it entirely changed ecological history. Within days, 26 swarms, complete with their African queens, escaped into the nearby forest. And from there, the spread was just explosive. Expanding at an astonishing rate of roughly 200 to 300 miles per year, they relentlessly marched out of Brazil, conquered South America, swarmed up through Central America, and eventually crossed the border into Texas in 1990. They didn't just survive out there, they entirely dominated their new environments. Section 3. Anatomy of an attack. The science of aggression. Now, what's really interesting about this is that, visually, an Africanized honeybee looks practically identical to an ordinary honeybee. Honestly, you'd need a microscope to tell them apart. But behaviorally, they are worlds apart. A standard European honeybee might chase a perceived threat for, I don't know, a few dozen feet before losing interest and flying back to the hive. But an Africanized honeybee? No way. They've been documented chasing a target for up to a quarter of a mile. Plus, their reaction time to threats is literally a fraction of a second, and their threshold for what even constitutes a threat is incredibly low. They're hyper-defensive of their territory, which is exactly why they're so extraordinarily formidable. Let's walk through the terrifying chain reaction of an attack. Step 1 is the trigger. Imagine you're just out on a Saturday, mowing your lawn, right? The vibration of the engine and the loud noise reach a hidden hive tucked inside an old tree stump or maybe an abandoned shed. That's all it takes. That instantly leads to step 2, a massive coordinated swarm response. They don't just send a couple of warning guards to check out the lawnmower. They instantly deploy the entire swarm, which brings us to step 3, that relentless pursuit we just talked about. Once you trigger them, they commit fully to driving that threat far, far away from their home, attacking anything moving in the vicinity. But here's the ultimate paradox. Their venom is not stronger. I know, it sounds entirely counterintuitive, given their deadly reputation. But drop for drop, an Africanized honeybee's venom is precisely the same and literally no more toxic than the sweet little garden bee you might see gently pollinating a daisy in your backyard. So, the crucial point is, if the venom isn't any stronger, where does the life-threatening danger actually come from? It comes entirely from the sheer, overwhelming math of a massive attack. Think hundreds, even thousands. A healthy adult human can easily survive 10 or maybe 20 regular bee stings, but when an Africanized hive is disturbed, hundreds and sometimes thousands of bees will attack simultaneously. For humans and animals alike, it's the pure volume of multiple stings delivered in a matter of moments that causes the body to cross the threshold into toxic overload, creating a truly life-threatening medical emergency. Section 4. The ecological truth. The plot twist. Here's the plot twist. These bees serve critical ecological roles. Yep, despite everything we just discussed about their fearsome defenses, they are still incredibly important pollinators. Actually, because they're so uniquely hardy and adapted to harsh conditions, they forage longer, they go out in worse weather, and they start earlier in the morning than their European counterparts. They are highly efficient pollinating machines. They're actively supporting global agriculture, helping wild plants reproduce, and playing a foundational role in maintaining entire ecosystems. Basically, their fierce aggression simply doesn't cancel out their immense biological utility. Let's reflect on this for a second. Without bees, many crops and wild plants would struggle to survive. I want you to really pause and visualize that. Think about walking into your local grocery store. Without the tireless work of pollinators, an estimated 1/3 of the human diet would simply vanish from those shelves. Poof, gone. No apples, no almonds, no coffee, no avocados. Our natural forests and our agricultural systems are deeply, deeply intertwined with their survival. We rely almost entirely on the daily labor of these highly adapted, fiercely protective insects. Section 5. Coexisting with the swarm. Modern management. Because we absolutely need them. Humanity has had to learn how to adapt and actually live alongside this incredibly formidable survivor. Today, commercial beekeepers in areas dominated by Africanized bees don't just throw their hands up and quit. They adapt their methods. They have to use significantly more smoke to effectively mask the powerful alarm pheromones these bees release, sometimes literally strapping massive continuous smokers directly to themselves. Standard beekeeping gear isn't always enough either. Handlers often wear much thicker, heavily reinforced suits with specialized veils and really heavy-duty gloves. The hives are also deliberately placed far away from livestock and human dwellings. The key here is respect. Experts know exactly how to navigate their defensive nature to keep the public safe while still reaping all those vital agricultural benefits. So they're feared by many and deeply misunderstood by others. This perfectly captures the dual nature of their legacy. The Africanized honeybee is the ultimate biological survivor, adapting and thriving across entirely new continents after a single, completely mundane experiment gone wrong. But they also stand as a stark warning from nature about the totally unpredictable, runaway consequences of human intervention in natural ecosystems. We end on this thought. A tiny insect with a massive reputation. They're a true marvel of biology and an essential, if fiercely defensive, part of our global ecosystem. So I leave you with this. Are the Africanized honeybees a monster we recklessly created, or simply nature's ultimate survivor demanding our respect? And perhaps more importantly, as our global climate continues to change and traditional species struggle, are they exactly the kind of resilient monster our fragile ecosystems actually need to survive?